A warm welcome to the Integrated Environmental Health Sciences Seminar Series. This binary series welcomes members and guests of both the P30 Center for Urban Responses to Environmental Stressors, CURES, and the P42 Center for Leadership in Environmental Awareness and Research, CLEAR, both funded by the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. I'm Graham Parker, the leader of the Translational Research Support Core of CURES, and it is my great pleasure today to introduce our guest speaker and TRSC co-investigator, Dr. Erin Bunting, Assistant Professor of the Department of Geography, Environment, and Spatial Sciences at Michigan State University. Erin's research integrates cutting-edge geospatial technologies to address environmental and societal challenges. Erin's training in geography saw her complete a bachelor's, master's, and her PhD, all at the University of Florida, before completing postdoctoral fellowships at the University of Florida and the Southwest Biological Sciences Center, which helps the U.S. Geological Survey provide expertise to federal and state agencies and the public to inform land management decision-making. Erin was then invited to become the director of the MSU Remote Sensing and GIS Research and Outreach Services. Erin has now transitioned from that role to a tenure-stream faculty position. Good job, Erin. Dr. Bunting is a prolific author with a keen collaborative instinct. Her history of funding from the NSF, the EPA, and the Department of Energy currently includes the Department of Defense Intelligence Advanced Research Projects Activity, the state of Michigan, and the U.S. Forest Service. Erin is a much sought-after public speaker on remote sensing and spatial analysis, and was our primary contact when Jessica Worley, who's joining us on this call, Malcolm Cutchin, and I looked to find a financially responsible and practical way to provide GIS support for our researchers and community partners, pursuing our remit to provide support for both basic and population-based research. The multifactorial integrated design analytical system MIDAS enterprise data platform is unique in the P30 network, providing CURES with capabilities customized for environmental health science tailored to Detroit. Dr. Erin Bunting will engage us with her presentation, MIDAS, Harnessing the Power of Geospatial Data in a Collaborative Environment. Thank you, Erin. You're still on mute, Erin.
We've only been doing this for 4 years. You would think I would have it by now. All right, take two. All right, thank you so much, everybody, for coming and taking part in the Zoom today. I do wish we could have been in person, but I do appreciate the large audience that we have on Zoom today. So as we're getting going today, if you haven't taken part in the survey, which I know has been emailed out quite a bit, the QR code is on the screen, and we would appreciate your insight into geospatial data and your utilization patterns. So let's talk about the roadmap for this next, say, 40 minutes or so of this talk. After giving you a brief background about myself, I want to walk through the birth of MIDAS, essentially, and how we got to where we are today, because we really are at a stage where it's ready to be a collaborative platform that serves the community of Wayne State and Henry Ford Health. And we want you to see the ins and outs and become more comfortable with it, with the hopes that you will like to be involved with MIDAS as well. From there, I'm actually going to show you some research that was taken part as the CLEAR project, but done within the collaborative atmosphere that is MIDAS. And so we'll walk through an example that we have ongoing research on right now. Next, we'll pause and we'll looking at research, and we'll talk more about MIDAS, looking at the benefits and the concerns, addressing those topics early on, again, so you can all see from my experience using it, my experience building it, and our experience deploying it for Wayne State, where we see the future usage patterns going. And then we'll circle back into the end and talk about the research results as they pertain to that CLEAR project I mentioned earlier. And we'll get into some things about how you could become more involved with MIDAS. So before we get into that side of things, just to give you a little bit more background, even though Graham gave me a very nice introduction, and hopefully this talk lives up to such a big introduction. But I've been here at Michigan State this is my 7th year now, and my focus in my doctoral work all the way up until now has really fallen into 3 areas. My master's degree, my background was more in the environmental sciences, looking at landscape change and hazards impacts, and thinking about what are critical tipping points for ecosystems. And this could be at a very local scale. So the image you see on the left is looking at villages across Botswana, where I did some of my dissertation work, all the way up to the regional scale. So what are the drivers of landscape change across major ecosystems? But we've also I've done a lot of work at the global scale. So looking at tipping points, biological shifts, biome shifts for major ecoregions all over the globe. Now, I do this by bringing in both GIS and remote sensing. I don't just call myself a remote sensing person because I know that they go hand in hand nowadays. They are really working in tandem together, and that does unlock more power when you bring them together. So in my background, while I focus a lot on time series remote sensing, that's where I kind of cut my chops in this field. I also do a lot with GeoAI. I do have a book coming out this year on GeoAI and big data, so I have to mention that. And that also includes a large background in spatial statistics, and it's mostly in terms of developing my own spatial statistics or kind of kidnapping a stat from another field of study like landscape ecology and bringing it more into the remote sensing field. And with those backgrounds, what we've been able to do is to develop more of this idea of critical thresholds, critical tipping points, persistence of landscapes across, again, major ecoregions of the world. From the image you see on the upper right is looking at Kruger National Park in South Africa, one of the most critically important parks in all of Africa because of the economic revenue that comes through there. What you see on the left is looking at the trends across some of the major regions of the Southwest in terms of what is the drought tolerance that the plants in those communities can absorb. So with what I've talked about, there's no doubt that I have a background in climatology as well. So again, looking at persistence of extremes, we have a large project in the US right now looking at persistence of heat waves and its impacts across both urban and rural and vegetated communities. And that does involve work looking at risk perceptions and the impact of increased climate variability. So a lot of times what we're talking about there is the idea of changes in temperature or changes in precipitation regimes, but we're also doing a lot of work with like wind trajectories, especially as it relates to agriculture. So that's the basics of my personal research and the personal projects I've been able to develop. And over the course of my career, I've been fortunate enough to have great collaborators all over the world in these topics. And currently I have active projects, not just across North America, but across major portions of Africa as well. Graham and I do have a bit of a running joke that he never knows where I'm going to be when he calls me. And 9 times out of 10, it seems like I am in another country. And that's just because I have great collaborators all over the world and I get to go and do field research in those areas. So that's just a bit about me. The majority of the presentation, though, will be about this beast here on the screen, which is MIDAS. As we mentioned before, multifactorial integrative design analytic system. Now, one thing I am going to kind of give a little warning about is sometimes I'm probably going to use the word enterprise GIS because that's what MIDAS is. It's an enterprise-based system. That's what our GIS analysts call it. That's what the company that Esri, who puts out ArcGIS Pro, for instance, call it. We've just, as we always do when we put in our grants, give it a really cool acronym and name. So I did promise Graham in this that I wouldn't give a basics on what GIS is or what enterprise GIS is. And I promise with the next slide, that's not what we're getting here. But I would be remiss in talking about an enterprise system without showing you what it entails, at least briefly. So what this system is, the kind of the behind the curtains components of it, it's a server that acts as a portal for researchers to use, and that has capabilities on the web and within ArcGIS Pro software, right? So the server is the collaborative atmosphere, the portal is the conduit, and that conduit allows us to do research and mapping capabilities in either a software-based approach like installed software or on a web application. Now, what we can do with MIDAS you don't need to know so much about that behind the curtain part because we want to talk about more the applied nature of it, is use this for data collection, data processing, mapping outputs. We have capabilities to do web apps. We have capabilities to make it mobile friendly, your outputs mobile friendly, and to even create websites through it. So we're going to show you each of these capabilities as we go throughout today within a research context. So if we kind of backtrack in history a little bit to when we were going for the renewal, and I met and we talked about what would MIDAS look like in this 2.0 iteration, because that's really what this is. This is the second version of it. It's an updated version of it. And this is the mock-up I put together at the time for the team. And what we're seeing here is a full system that includes not just data visualization, but statistics and an interactive mapping component. We have a static or interactive, not just an interactive component. We have advanced spatial modeling options available to us, advanced spatial statistics available to us, and we have the ability to take this mobile in a number of different directions, both with mobile field data collection and with just saying release data to the communities, let them be able to see the trends on the phones, or even possibly, like I say, on a tablet doing analysis. But it's not just that. This system has more to it than just that. It is a secure system. And I know with the data we're talking about for CURES and CLEAR, we need to talk about security. And I will get to that as we go throughout the rest of this presentation. It is a collaborative system. Two people can be working across the world on the same exact data set at the same exact time. And because of the capabilities of the dual collaborative system that we've developed, it is not only registered and monitored, but there's concurrent backups that would keep old copies available if you needed to go back. It also can support scientific communication in a number of different ways. The main way is through easy to put together scientific dashboards that are, in my personal opinion, really great to put into grants to show people you can do quick data releases to the public. All of this is done to increase data sharing, to increase the collaborative nature, but also not just within the research community here at CURES and at CLEAR, but also as you think about your community partners and community engagement activities. So we're at the point where MIDAS is ready to go. It's been a couple years in the making, and it's now a system that is launched and ready for users to kick the tires on it. And this is MIDAS. This is it in its online web version. I'll show you some other versions of it as we go throughout today. And this is a secure system that you do need login for, which we can provide login. That system is stored here at Michigan State. And so we have a team who are working to do the management on our side. And we have Alex, our new hire over with TRSC, who can manage and assist on the Wayne State and Henry Ford side. All right, so as we go through today, I'm going to include a bunch of videos to show you the utility of MIDAS as we go, to show some options that are available to us. All right, I'm going to pause talking about MIDAS for just a few seconds, and I'm going to go towards the research side of things, because one thing, while I'm going to show you research, you have to keep in mind that this was all done within MIDAS. So about 18 months ago or so, Brendan O'Leary came to me and said, "Are you interested in working on some research together?" And I said, "Tell me more, like what are we talking about here?" And he said, "We have a number of brownfields sites across the city, and these sites can be either Part 201 sites, so these are like the environmental remediation sites, or he was particularly interested in our Part 213 sites, which are the leaking underground storage tank sites." And he wanted to look at the trends of those. He had had a long history of working with this data throughout his dissertation and now through his postdoc to look at spatial gradients and trends. So one of the first things we did is we put together a really simple hotspot analysis. We looked at all of the hotspots or all of the brownfield sites together, and we said, where are there hotspots or cold spots with statistical significance to them? So darker red, we were talking about with 99% significance level, all the way to those that are gray and area are not significant in their trends. So the blue is showing you the cold spots relative to the total abundance of points. Now, obviously, this is for all of our points together, but we also ran these trends looking at, say, just our part 213, where our open sites and our closed sites. So our open sites being sites that are still needing remediation, our closed sites being sites that, as much as possible, have been remediated. I'm sure this group knows that pretty well. But again, we can, with every single data set you're about to see the analysis on, there's about 20 subsets of the analysis that we've gone through. Brendan and I and Jennifer and Andrea and Glenn have dissected this data and run hotspot analysis and subsequent stats in a number of different ways. And I'm going to show you a brief picture of that. So in addition to talking about the brownfield sites, really what the interest was to link it to some health outcomes. And that's where Jennifer and Andrea came into play, and they provided us some data on preterm birth across the state, so across the city. And we have also data about the mothers too, race, ethnicity, age, things of that nature. And so just like what we did with the brownfield sites, the first foray into this was just to look at the hotspots associated with preterm birth for our African American populations and our white populations. And you can see some vastly different patterns already on the screen, all the way from a more clustered over here, more hotspots altogether, and lots of hotspots that are smaller, but at a high significance level. Interesting enough, there's only really 3 large hotspots with our population of preterm birth from white mothers. And what we see is that there are 3 very large hotspots, and they're all statistically significant from our data. Now, this is data that was part of the GeoDocs project, so it's a little bit, it's not like last year's data, it's from a couple of years ago. And what we have for our brownfield sites and for our preterm birth data and for some demographic data I'll show you in the next few slides, they're all lined up temporally. So not only do we have preterm birth data, but we have things like low birth weight, gestational age. We have a number of covariates. I'm going to focus on preterm birth for this presentation because I only have 40 minutes. So as I mentioned, this has been done within MIDAS, right? We can do analysis, and it's going to look to you much just like a normal ArcGIS screen, right? But what it's behind the scenes is a connection to a secure collaborative server. This data is not stored locally on your computer. Instead, what's happening is you're linking to the server, you're using the portal to link to that data, you're running your analysis, and then you're serving your outcomes back to the portal. You're not changing the original data, you're serving new data back to the system, back to the server, right? So this is one way that MIDAS can be used. Another way is through the web interface that I've already showed you. The web interface has extreme capabilities to do geospatial analysis, modeling, statistics, graphing, and map making. And what you're seeing is, again, the hotspot analysis being done, but within the web version. Obviously, having these 2 versions opens up a lot of possibilities to us. We now can be offline or on our computers working on analysis through the software installed, or we can be, like, if we don't have a license of ArcGIS Pro, we can be online and working on the server and running analysis. So with this research project, like I mentioned before, we have our brownfield sites, we have our health outcomes or our birth outcomes. We also have a lot of demographic data behind this. So firstly, again, just running a bunch more of our hotspot analysis here, again, within the ArcGIS interface, ArcGIS Pro interface. And so here we're looking at our hotspots associated with total population. But more interestingly, given what we've shown already, our hotspots associated with our population African American, population are white. We did restrict the age range to those who would be within an age that would have children. for here. So, all right, we cut off the age, and I want to say we cut it off at 50, but I can't I don't want to definitively say that here. So what we can see, just a comparison of those two, pretty obvious on the screen, vastly different hotspot patterns between the two populations, right? It's almost a reciprocal of each other. And given what we all know about Detroit, that's not the most shocking outcome. Now, what we're looking to do with this research, though, is bring these worlds together, right? We want to look at this hotspot analysis in a fully encompassed manner to say, where are there alignments, where are there symmetries, where are there adjacencies that are of interest to us, or where are there clusters of overlaps? And so that's the goal of this. Yeah, the hotspot was the first step, but the goal was actually to look for the alignment more so. Right, so I'm gonna actually pause on the research side of it. You're gonna see it brought up a few times throughout the next couple of slides, but I want to now kind of talk about the ins and outs of MIDAS and kind of kick the tires a little bit of it. So we're gonna talk about potential benefits of this system. And if you have taken the survey, you're going to know that one of the questions we have are like, what are your perceived potential benefits? And a lot of those benefits I also view as options for ways to use MIDAS, or options for ways to be collaborative, or options for ways to make this part of your lab groups or your research agenda. So some of the options that I want to talk about over the next couple of slides are anywhere from time savings to cost to efficiency. So let's start off by talking about these 3 bullets in red here. So first off, talking about time savings approaches, improved collaboration, and a centralized data management. And I have those all together because they do go hand in hand. First off, it should be noted that this system that you're seeing is actually about 4 years in the making. Jessica came to us a couple of years ago with these ideas. We actually came out and did some seminars to gain interest in that. We built kind of the system 1.0. This is the system 2.0, given a wide variety of updates. And what we've seen over the course of the time, and we've refined over the course of the time, is that there is a system that is needed to fit the goals of CURES, CLEAR, and the broader community across which you all work. I work as well. And so this time savings is something that we hope others can see that, this system that we've built, it's not just a generalized system. It's a system that's customized to this group. And that's another way you all can save time. You don't have to do that as well. Now, it does improve collaboration. In terms of, it improves collaboration in a few manners, right? Because it's a centralized data management system, in some ways we could call it a cloud-based system. It's kind of the old school word for it now. But what it is this system is collaborative in that if you put general data into MIDAS, data that you don't want protected or under secure, then it does become available to all other researchers who are part of MIDAS. So for example, the brownfields data, that's data we just obtained from the EPA. And so we don't have any protections over that. We don't have any reasons to lock it down. It's now up in MIDAS. If somebody, I'm going to pick a random name on this screen, Mallory Lund, decided that she needed to use brownfield data, she could go into MIDAS and pull it there. It would include the metadata associated with it, so you would know when it was collected and like what group it came from. The original metadata that came with the file is also going to be up there. So another way that it improves collaboration, not just say within your personal research group, but across groups as well. You're going to have access to some data. You might not have to go hunting for some data. Additionally, we can talk about how it improves collaboration within a group, within a research team, a lab, for instance. The best example of this is I could be sitting here at Michigan State working on an analysis on a data layer, and Brendan could also be over at Wayne State working on that same data layer doing other analysis. We can either co-code together and co-work on it together, or I could be running a model that outputs to a different output, so I've not edited the original version, and he could be doing something else as well. So that's how this collaborative nature is built into the system. So overall, what does this lead to? Well, it can lead to some better decision making. I can tell you from personal experience with a system such as this, we have another one of these systems built for coastal analysis across the Great Lakes. And this system has been deployed now to the state of Michigan, and they are using it for some local scale projects to talk about coastline reinforcement. So there is a history of it being used in terms of like decision and policy making, but obviously there's the scale of better decision making within your groups as well, within your labs or within your teams or in your own personal research. Additionally, this system is very scalable. So with the information you have, the capabilities you have, one way you can scale is, from different not just like say census blocks, you can scale up, but there are capabilities like if you're doing remote sensing work, say within one region of Detroit, if you have this conduit of the MIDAS system that's also linked to another conduit I'll talk about here in a second, you can just easily scale up that research to say the broader scale of Michigan. I'll talk more about that as we go. Now, MIDAS also has the capabilities for some advanced geovisualization. It has the option to output static maps, what we would need for publications, no doubt. Interestingly enough, it also has a lot of tutorials about how to make publications, maps for publications ADA compliant in terms of like color ramps and things of that nature. What we also have though, beyond the static map is a very advanced, could be complex or simplistic interactive geovisualization system. And that's what something like this looks like. So right now, like we've run the hotspot analysis, that's what you're seeing on the screen. What you're seeing MIDAS do in the web version is create a chart off of just a really simple output, just counts of all the Part 213 data, right? So it has charting capabilities, it has our interactive mapping capabilities, it has our static mapping capabilities, and all of those are fully customizable. As you just saw over on the right, Alex, who was gracious enough to help me with these videos, showed the column where you could change the labels, the scale bar, the stretch. This is like if you would make a graph or a figure within R or ARC or Excel or whatever SAS, SPSS, whatever you use to make your figures. You do have the customized capabilities within this system as well. Additionally, as you're seeing on the screen now, you also have the capabilities of downloading static maps, dictating the DPI, making it publishable quality. And as you can see on the left, there's a wide variety of base maps available to you, color schemes, and there's also guiding documentation on when would be the ideal use of those. But the same thing is available on the web version. The web version, the in-person version have this, they all have all these capabilities I'm talking about, the interactive, the static, and the graphing side. So you don't have to be just using the installed version on your local computer. You can go and use the web version as well. And that's because these systems are all connected, right? What you go through and do is now that this system is built, the way we connect this is you simply put in the URL for MIDAS into ArcGIS. You say, hey, this is my portal. This is where I'm working. And you sign in. Again, I told you earlier, we have to have unique sign-ins. And once you do that, everything can be connected. If you do work in your web atmosphere, it is automatically up within the server. You could then subsequently open it on your installed version of ArcGIS Pro as well. They're all connected. So that leads us back to some options that we have talking about for MIDAS. And I'm going to group the next three together because they're all about increasing efficiency, right? And I will freely admit that for a number of years, I didn't think that the Esri platform, which is what this is built off of, had the capabilities to do advanced GIS, remote sensing, spatial modeling, and even GeoAI work. That's not the case anymore, though. So within this system, we have seen a large investment by Esri to get into the most recent areas of spatial analysis, the most cutting edge, bleeding edge areas of geospatial analysis. all the way from machine learning to deep learning capabilities are now functional within the Esri platform. This includes vector analysis, raster analysis, real-time data analysis, and then also includes some three-dimensional and also network analysis as well. Now, if that's still not your sweet spot, if you're an R person, or if you're like me, I'm a Google Earth Engine person. I do all my remote sensing work in Google Earth Engine. There's still a lot of capabilities for you here, because what Esri has done is a large investment to make these systems connect to the Esri platform and therefore connect to the MIDAS system. There is a bridge between R and ArcGIS, and there's also a way, it's a ever-changing way that Google Earth Engine can be linked to ArcGIS Pro as well. So whatever your choosing platform is, we have, well, for the most part, at least for spatial analysis, we have options available to you to work collaboratively. All right, that leads us to our last few options here. We'll first talk about cost savings. And there's two big things I'll mention here. This was a large investment by the CURES grant to build this system. And this system is not something that's cheap to put together, and now it's ready to go. So there would be no need for a grant to write, like if you're interested in writing a grant to build such a system. It's now available to Wayne State and to the members of Henry Ford Health as well. So a large cost savings in that side. The other type of cost savings, though, are on a smaller scale. One thing that's really great about these types of enterprise systems is they can build dashboards. They can build data repository sites. They can build data release sites. Again, all nested within MIDAS. And that means there's cost savings in that there's templated versions. There's also unique versions that can be put together, or fully customizable versions to be put together. So you could, in a more economical manner, tell a grant, within your grant, write that you're going to do a data release or a public forum about your data, and put it up online. And that can be done within a dashboard. Depending on the complexity, a very simple dashboard can be done in less than a day. Obviously, a very difficult dashboard, complex, not promising any just one day turnover. Now, if we go through and talk about what that means, kind of linking back to this idea that these dashboards are available to us, that means we can more readily link to the public. We can make the public available of these spatial patterns and give them better spatial awareness. So for one example here that I have is one that we've put together for our coastal project that I mentioned to you earlier. This is our incredibly simple data release repository of coastal land change imagery. We have numerous sites across the Great Lakes. We have 9 sites now. When this was taken, we only had 2. And so what we could have is users of the imagery could come in and download it, but we're also giving them background on the data as well. Again, this took less than a week to build this site. And this was me in my first time ever building one of these dashboards. So last on my list of options or benefits of it is support for field data collection. And I think that probably is going to interest a number of people within this network. So MIDAS can support field data collection in a couple of different ways. There's really 2 approaches that are used within this Esri platform. And I gave you my research background before, early in this presentation. And I can tell you that my field site looks pretty different than your field sites most of the time. I'm typically out in the middle of nowhere, and I have used these systems that you're about to see in these sites because they have both online and offline capabilities. So it doesn't matter where. It can be on a tablet, it can be on a phone, online, offline. Don't even have to be here in the US. I have used these at numerous countries all over the world. And that's because we've expanded our mobile GIS capabilities. We've built in a lot of power within these, within this topic of like network capacity, network connectivity. Our phone GPS is great at this point compared to what it was even 5 years ago. So because of the capabilities or the growth of mobile GIS, we can do what I'm about to show you. So MIDAS has 2 ways that we can collect field data. And it doesn't matter, like I mentioned, where you are. You could be in the middle of nowhere in rural Botswana with an elephant chasing you, and you could still have your data sheet out there and collect data, or you could be in the middle of Detroit, down in a park or collecting field data. The first way this is done is through field maps. And field maps is on an app, or sorry, it's an app that you can have on your phones, on your tablets. And what it does is you can go through, and there are very structured forms that you can use and put together. You can customize them yourself, but there are templates available to you. You can create that template. Then, because you have GPS capabilities on your phone, it can use that capabilities. You can also use a better GPS if you have it. But once you build that template out with your research questions, your survey, you can deploy that survey, collect it. So I could deploy it from my computer here, and I could have a group of researchers, in Detroit with the app on their phone. I've deployed it to their phone. They can go and collect. I can get the GPS location that their phone is currently in, and I could see the survey that they have collected. I could then share the survey if I needed to, like, say, share results from it as well. So to give you an example of this, because there's really two unique ways that you can do this. You as the researcher can build the survey and deploy, but the way I've used it more so is as a citizen science approach. So again, going back to our coastal example that we have here, we built what we call pictures. And we're looking for pictures across the Great Lakes of areas where there's landscape change, like erosion, bluff failure, dune failure, loss of sediments, things of that nature. So we built pictures freely available to the public. They open the app on their phone. At this point, we have about 2,000 active users and over 10,000 entries. And this is just an example from one type of it. They open the app on their phone. It gives me the GPS coordinate of where they're standing. They take a picture of the hazard. They fill in our data sheet. You can have a data sheet if you want it, or you could just have them take the picture and upload. And then it goes to our enterprise server, right? And here's just the example that we put through as one of our research assistants. She was trying it out. So we said it was bluff erosion or bluff failure, the date she collected it. Again, I didn't ask a huge number of questions because since I'm a remote sensing person, I want the images. So the more important part to me was that it can collect the images as well. It can collect audio, it can collect video, it can collect images, right? So two ways that field maps can be used: citizen science approach, researcher approach. Now, the second way that it can be used, or that the field data collection can happen, is what we call survey 123. Just talk about field maps. Survey 123 is going to look more like your traditional survey, right? It's going to look more like a form. You notice that obviously the survey getting terms confused. The field map that I showed you previously looked like a map and had a survey kind of attached to it. This is the inverse. You have a form with a small map embedded. One is map driven, one is form driven. So survey 123 is our form driven, again, fully customizable. You could ask questions within a survey about the map. You could have them draw polygons of areas that they're interested in. Drop a point here on what grocery store you go to. What path do you walk to work? What park do you use? Like things of that nature, you can drop questions into the form. Again, online, offline capabilities. All right, in my last few slides here, I want to talk about addressing some concerns. And the concerns, again, were listed in our survey. From cost of implementation, I've already kind of alluded to the fact that we've implemented it. It's ready to go. The initial setup cost is gone. Obviously, there's a cost to learn it and to invest in it and to get projects within it, but the initial cost of construction is gone. The next one I want to talk about is the lack of user-friendly interface. I think you'll see once you get into it that it's pretty user-friendly in that if you're used to ArcGIS Pro, it's the same layout. It's 100% capable within ArcGIS Pro, so you can be just as comfortable using that as you were ArcGIS Pro. If you're in the online version, it's just a few simple tabs different. The great thing about it is we have Alex too now, who's here, who's fully trained on this, who can help us use it, right? So here's that interface again, showing within This is a portal instance. This is the MIDAS instance, but again, within the ArcGIS Pro screen. All right, so going to the next part is to talk about like the training or the time invested. That's something, if you're interested in the system and you're concerned about this, come and talk to us. We do have a number of these videos put together now to show small instances and to help people kind of dip their feet into it. But we're talking now currently about like, how do we hold trainings? What do we need to do to make people buy into the system more, to use the system more, to see the options available to them? So if this is a concern, my number one piece of advice is just talk to us. The next thing is to talk about data compatibility. Well, this system is capable of using spatial data and aspatial data. Now, is it perfect at aspatial data? No, it's made for spatial data. But again, you have people on the team over here who are very comfortable in both data formats, all the way from geocoding, so we can make data spatial, to how we integrate and join data sets together in a correct, statistically robust manner. So within this system, we can join data, or we can bring data in through the portal again. So we can bring in tables. We don't just have to bring in shapefiles and rasters. We can bring in tables. We can bring in figures. There's a number of options for data that we can bring into this. Additionally, there's a lot of ways for us to transform data. So there are a number of data types that in its present form can't be brought in to the system, but there's the tools within MIDAS to convert them to a different format that is acceptable. So you can talk to us about that as well. All right, the next few things to talk about are, if you're not familiar with geospatial analysis altogether, a number of options, and I kind of am repeating myself a tiny bit. I know there's plans to talk about maybe having like office hours for Alex or time with Alex, like so you could start to like say like ask us questions in terms of like, what if we can we do this? Can we do that? And again, I'm more than happy to have those conversations as well. And I think Graham and Alex will say the same thing. They're happy for people to come and talk to them about possibilities. That's the one thing about this is there are a lot of possibilities available out there. All right, my last one on the list to talk about in terms of concerns, and I'm sure there's a number of concerns here because this is a group that deals with really protected data, usually IRB protected data, and I can tell you two things. One is we have gotten IRB approval for data sets to be housed within MIDAS. That is, Jessica confirmed that to me earlier this week. That's one big step forward, and we can talk about how this could be done. But the flip side of it, and I think the thing that goes beyond just the IRB side, is to know that within MIDAS, we can create groups, subgroups. So just because you upload data to MIDAS doesn't mean everybody can see it. If you upload it to your group or to your personal group, like if it's just you, then your data would be locked down to you as a researcher. Now, the perfect world would be if you have data that's not protected, like the brownfields I've mentioned, then you would upload it to the public. So everybody within MIDAS could get access to it. But for instance, our preterm birth data, that's data that we don't want. We didn't even give it to Alex, for instance, for the videos to be made. It's IRB protected. And so that could be put into a specific group with me, Brendan, Andrea, and Jennifer, only to have access to it. And secure password protected access. So if you look at within MIDAS, here's groups right here, and you can see that we've created this group for the brownfields example. We have members that we invite. They would have to obviously accept the invitation. Just because you send an invite out to them doesn't mean they get access automatically. They have to sign up for an account. And also only the lead can send out the invites. So if I was working on it and say Brendan wanted to send it out to somebody, he would not be able to do that. It's who owns the group would be able to send that out. So that would be like your PIs, essentially. All right, so let's circle back and kind of give this the last few slides here. Back to the research side, back into showing some conclusions here. And the thing we're going to talk about is how we're using MIDAS to compare the output of our hotspot analysis, the hotspots I showed you 32 slides ago, 32 slides ago. And so what we're doing is we're looking at this preterm birth, we're overlaying the brownfields data, and in a number of statistics, we are looking at how they align and how the neighborhoods around them align as well. So the first thing we're doing is using this similarity index. And the similarity index is looking at, again, the statistical significance of those hotspots, and it's just saying, are they aligning? Not necessarily is a hotspot aligning with a hotspot, just are the statistically significant clusters aligning? So if it's more towards 1, there's more similar. If it's more towards 0, it's less similar. And this is what that looks like. So what you'll see is the darker orange are areas that are not, there's nothing similar between those, but the lighter oranges that you're seeing here in this region, down here, there's a bit here, and those are showing almost complete similarity, especially in this area right here and this area down here. So again, this is looking at census block level. So we didn't expect every census block to align. That would be ridiculous and very unhealthy. But we can now pinpoint the exact census blocks where there was some alignment between our brownfields data and our preterm birth outcomes. We did this by differing race and ethnicity. So what you're looking at is for the African American population. Additionally, we can look at the significance level. So this is where we actually see what those combinations are. Is it a hotspot aligned with a hotspot, cold spot aligned with a cold spot, or is it a non-significant area overlaid with a hotspot? That's what we can see now. And that's what this looks like here. So let's first look at the legend. That's the easiest way to start with this kind of complex map. What you're seeing here where it says like hot, non-significant on the left-hand side, that's the hotspot analysis from our health data, our preterm birth data. What you see on the other side here, result 2 essentially, this is from our brownfields data. So was it a cold spot in our health data and a hot spot in our brownfields data? Then it would be this very dark red color. So what you see is that there's not any of those dark red colors. And that's fine. But what there is if we look at areas where they were both hot spots, that's this pink color here. You can see these here, pink color here. Again, really clearly which census blocks were hot spots in both instances. So we can calculate the area, the abundance. We can also calculate the proximity. So what we can see too is this slashed area, this red slashed area. These are hotspots compared to non-significant brownfields results. And you might say, well, why is that important? But if you look at these, look how close at least these here are to other major brownfields hotspots. So we can use, it doesn't have to just be hotspot overlaid with hotspot. It can be cold spot overlaid with cold spot. Right. And that can be a little difficult to see. I understand that. We've looked at this for ages, but I think one of the best ways to look at here is this block here. So we're now talking about this area right in here, thinking about this being here and also it being right here. So we can see it one for one. All right, and then the last way, and this is my last slide or two here, is to talk about the fuzzy kappa. This is a way that we can actually look for clusters of alignment. And we can say, okay, not just one for one, like a census tract or a census block in one area aligned with a census block in another, but what about the blocks around it? How are those matching? And again, it's on the scale. This is actually from 0 to 1, but there are some negative values. Don't worry about too much. And what we see for this area, again, where we're seeing some region or neighborhood alignment, again, right in this portion of Detroit, over here, we see we have more census blocks involved. We start to see this area come up as more important. And again, this was always important, these areas down here. So this fuzzy kappa tells us more about regions or more about neighborhoods, which is important to this type of analysis as well. Again, what I showed you was just looking at the African American population. This has been done for our white population as well. And then we've also brought in the demographic data into this. But again, had 40 minutes. So I didn't want to bury people in every single result that we had. All right, so in my closing slide, I just want to say thank you everybody for staying on and listening. It's been a great working with this team. You guys are very receptive to a lot of crazy ideas a lot of the time. And I appreciate that. And if you're interested in MIDAS and working with it, please feel free to contact me. My email's up on the screen. Alex, his email's on the screen as well, and Graham. And the last thing I'm going to say is I know I had a pre-survey, but now that you've seen more about MIDAS, I would love for you all to take the post survey as well. And this is the link to the post seminar survey. All right. And I think if we have any questions, I'm open to it.
That was fantastic, Erin. Thank you so very much. Well, people are, of course, more than welcome to drop questions into the chat. And maybe I'll start us off by asking a question. People are kind of used to people giving presentations with nice pictures and graphs. But I think, Erin, what you bring to the table is this stringency of statistical analysis that takes us beyond that level of here's a pretty picture to actually being able to try and interpret the data set in a responsible way. I guess I just want to ask, how when we send in our grants to be reviewed by other biostatisticians, I've always found that if you had two biostatisticians in a room, they would give you different answers to the same questions. How do you find the concordance of opinion on what is the correct way to analyze data in this field?
That's a great question, because I think within GIS remote sensing, there's a core set of defined methods, models, statistics. And those, the tires have been kicked enough, you're not going to get much pushback on those. But what I'm going to say is that a lot of those don't fit our current problems. And so what I've pivoted to is a lot of work on developing my own stats. And not my own stats, like I'm not going in and doing the equation from scratch, but I'm borrowing from other groups like landscape ecology, biology, ecology, and looking at what they're doing and taking it to a pixel level. So something that you guys have done maybe across a population of people, now can we do it across a population of pixels? And that's really where I see, because I think that we're now at a capability with computing world that we can do that type of work. We can do individual statistics on pixels, polygons, census blocks, census tracts in a way we never could before. And that actually gets a lot of pushback from grantees. And luckily I've published enough on it at this point that I can be like, look at the citation, I can back it up. But when we have new stats coming into play, obviously people are going to ask a lot of questions. And I think one kind of luck that we have in the remote sensing world is that really time series remote sensing is really new, and this like GeoAI modeling. So within even what these applications we're seeing here, we're still really evolving it. So while they're going to question it, we're also trying to explore new options and expand it because we see the power of it. So yeah, there's going to be some questions, but I think there's a number of ways you can work through those in a grant write-up.
Terrific. The floor is open. I'll keep asking questions if nobody else asks a question. And there'll be good questions, I promise, but I want to make sure everybody feels welcome. Carrie's got her hand up.
Hi, Erin. Thanks so much for the great presentation. It's a lot to deal with.
We're glad to have gone through.
You as an expert. Can you imagine or provide a tangible example of how this system might be used for local advocates?
Absolutely. I can give you a number of examples. So for instance, I'll give you examples of stuff I've worked on, and I'll give you an example of stuff that Esri advertises hugely because it was so successful. One of the big things that they advertise is their work inner city LA using this and deploying this system to talk about food distribution to those who are unhomed or unhoused. And it's been really, really commonly embraced by NGOs across that city who are doing the food distribution, who can now look collectively at their app and be like, okay, this NGO is working in this neighborhood now, this NGO is working here. They can also get input and feedback of, where are their new populations of unhoused people who they want to go and work with. That's one of the ones that has gotten a lot of attention because there's a lot of celebrities who have come in and played a role in that as well. Now, me personally, what I can tell you is actually from my dissertation work and how we used it in small communities across Botswana and Namibia. So we were working and looking at the impact of decision making and within these are obviously pretty unique and rural systems in that they depend on hunting within their surrounding areas. So we would ask them questions like, how is community decision making done in terms of what animals are hunted or what animals are sold? How is the government policy coming into play to dictate those decisions? And what we're actually seeing, or what we were seeing across the financial sector, the physical sector, and the environmental sector, is very differing opinions were coming out in terms of who were the drivers, who were the players. And so we could go to the government of Botswana, who are big, it's a huge environmental government, like they're very pro environment. And we could show them, okay, these are some of your communities and how they're feeling. It was totally unidentified data. So we couldn't, it wasn't linked back to the individuals, but we scaled it up from that local household level to the NGO, well, not NGOs, NGOs who are working in the area, to other researchers within our team, all the way up to the Botswanan government.
I, like Graham, could keep going, but I'm going to wait and get in line behind Graham before I add some
I
more.
will also add too, like we have done this in coastal areas here in Michigan. So like I've seen before, like that's what I showed you all with the pictures. That started as grassroots going to community meetings and trying to get them to embrace it. And now we have people at the Coastal Resilience team who are asking us questions about it. So we've seen just over the course of the 2 years that's been deployed, the embrace of that approach. And so it went from community members to, we had at one point, I mean, it's died off a bit now, but we were going or being on Zoom for city councils or township council meetings quite regularly because they wanted us to explain data to them. And then all the way up to the state level.
Erin, you mentioned in your training, your expertise was in looking at different time points data. And I wonder, to me, one of the most powerful things I can see of using this system is to be able to use it for environmental surveillance, to be able to look at where the occurrence of, say, these buried cylinders are and see what the health outcomes are today, but then go back and have a look in 6 months to be able to really show local government this is happening because those are there, and we can show it because it's increased in this area where we know the buried cylinders are.
Yes, I can feed to that in 2 ways. I think I know there's a capability of linking data loggers to MIDAS as well. So if you have something like even weather station data can be linked to it as well. So we could have literally real-time data that's being collected and brought in. So you wouldn't have to be going out to that field site to collect it or to download that data, which would have saved me a year of fun hiking across different portions of the Southwest. But the other side you can do, which is great, is actually you can link to other databases or other portal instances, and all the governmental groups, the state, local governments, international governments, it's becoming popular to have these. So you could link up to, for instance, the DTMB, Data Management Bureau at Michigan State, State of Michigan, and automatically have a portal instance to their database, to the data they've released, of course. So you could have a narration where you say I'm going to use brownfields again, the brownfield sites that we've downloaded that were safe up to 2020, and then the state releases a new data set. Maybe you didn't know they released a new data set, but you've linked your portals. And so then it populates and it comes up and you see that there's been new data added. So there's a number of ways that you can keep data up to date and modern and ever rolling, ever expanding. Data volumes will increase dramatically once you start to do this.
Go on, Carrie, ask another one.
Okay, so let's imagine a scenario. We most frequently get requests from the Community Engagement Corps. I also say, who am I? I'm Carrie, and I am a co-leader of the Community Engagement Corps of CURES. And we get requests for data, evidence, visualizations, tools to navigate against to advocate against, for example, a concrete crushing site to be installed or rezoning, meetings to advocate against more harms entering different neighborhoods. And so I've gone and pulled data from Phoenix, right? Environmental justice map. It's hard to tell that story and then somebody else to use that data to tell the story. Do you have, like, off the top of your head, ways that this platform could be leveraged, specifically at the neighborhood level, that I could provide to those people to help make an argument about why that would be exacerbate health outcomes maybe in that area?
Yes, I have
Oh,
two
okay,
avenues to talk with you about that. First off, it's not exact. I'll give you an example that's not exactly there, but it's the same kind of line of thought. We use one of our portal instances. We work with some tribal communities across Oklahoma, and they're trying to reboundary some tribal lands. And they wanted to use both current and historical spatial data to prove where their boundary has always been. The state is trying to claim that land was never theirs, and we can go back far in history because they have that data, luckily, and look at where their lands are. So, and that's a project we've been working on for years with them. Now, obviously, kind of a different context, but kind of going back to what I've mentioned about how we can hook up to different portal instances. There's also different ways to, as that data is updating, as that data is constantly like an ever-living stream, your models to do this can be an ever-living stream as well. So if you're getting kind of consistently asked for something similar, but a new subset of the data, well, it's kind of automatically downloading or updating the new data if you use the portal instance and connection that I'm talking about. So you would not have to go back and re-download and do all that again. It's nested there within your portal instance, within your profile. So that's another way to do it. The other thing to mention is with some of the models that are available to us within the system, there's a lot of rank and weigh models all the way to super complex deep learning models. So there's a wide variety of options within the already kind of tried and tested modeling approaches. So I think there's a couple of ways that community concern, that community issue could be served with the assistance of MIDAS.
Okay, well, we're at 1:34. Erin's about to jump in her car and drive to Detroit, actually to the iBio, and meet with some of our researchers. But I think I would say the last word is to firstly say it's wonderful that Jessica Worley could join us for this call today. But secondly, also to encourage everybody to take the post-seminar survey, which is going to help us have a better understanding how we better can serve you. So if everybody would please join me in thanking Erin once more for a fantastic presentation. I'll hand it back to Lynn to close us out. Thank you so much, Erin.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, don't forget to scan that QR code and do the post-seminar survey. And then also, let me just see. I'm just going to talk about our next seminar for next week. On the 27th of March, we have Dr. Yoichi Ozawa joining us to discuss the toxicological perspectives on the regulation of cytochrome P450. And I can't share my screen for some reason. Let's see. Here we go.
Probably because I'm occupying it.
There we go. Can everyone see that? He's coming to speak for us next week. So please join us Thursday at 12:30 once again, just like every week. So that's all for me. Thanks everybody for coming, and thank you, Erin, for that wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
we'll see you all next
Take
week.
care.
Bye-bye.
Good to see you, Jessica.
You too. It was great.
It was. Thank you.